So welcome to Economy of One. This is the first time we've done a Zoom call interview, but this is so exciting. Today we're going to be talking about if you are a college student and you're putting together a resume, what do you do? Where do you start? What can you anticipate? How should you think about this whole process? I'd like to introduce you to the most amazing person I know and one of the most amazing resources for Economy of One, a co-founder who is just phenomenal in his depth and breadth of understanding of professional issues, Mr. Frank Benura. That was very exciting, Frank. So Frank is joining us, and also we have a guest on today. His name is Hunter. Hunter is a student from Benedictine College who is in process of getting ready to launch and had some tough questions for us. So we thought we would share his perspective and just open up by letting him explain a little bit about his circumstances and why he wanted to talk to us. Hunter, would you like to share a little bit?
Yes, of course. So I kind of came into this process just trying to make my resume and myself a little more believable and kind of pop out. I've had a lot of jobs. They've all been, just those high school jobs that you work every summer. And I kind of want to progress onto something that's more career building for myself, start heading in the right direction. And didn't really know how to approach it. Got some networking connections, led me here. And I'm excited to get some help, find out answers to my questions, and go from there.
Wonderful. We are so excited to hear your questions because you represent just this incredible audience that right now is so challenged with COVID and with everything you're dealing with and trying to connect virtually with employers. So, what kind of questions do you have for us? We really care about this audience and we want to put together a meaningful understanding of what's best.
My first question revolves around the resume itself, I suppose. Obviously, there's that building block paper that you plug in the information and it all equals the resume and things like that. But what makes it kind of pop out or stick out to an employer that says, hey, this person's resume says something, maybe I should try and talk to them? And what's the top two things you would say that kind of make that resume pop out to those employers?
Frank?
Yeah, so I will tell you, Hunter, from this day forward, the big rule that we would like for you to never forget is that you never want to submit documentation that isn't meaningful. When I say documentation that's meaningful, what's that? What do you hear when I say that? What do you believe I'm trying to communicate?
To me, that sounds kind of like don't write something up that doesn't mean anything to you, that you're not passionate about, I suppose. That's kind of
Well, that's important. I would also say that that's important, but for the purpose of what we're talking about in terms of the resume and having it others receive your resume, is that document needs to be meaningful to them. We all know what junk mail is, right? And we know what happens with junk mail. What do you do with junk mail?
put it in the trash folder.
What do you do if something comes in the mail and it means something to you?
Usually open it up right away.
Correct. So you want to think of your CV, your resume, bio, whatever you want to call it. As a matter of fact, any documentation that you submit to a prospective employer, the only way it can possibly be meaningful is if you know what's important to the recipient. That's the core of all of this when it comes to a resume, a CV, or a bio. It needs to be meaningful. Now, can you give me some thoughts on how you would ensure that the document that you're going to submit to an employer, how you can make it meaningful? Do you have some thoughts on how you might be able to do that?
I'd say probably the first thing is to make it specific to not only maybe a position, but to somebody that's in charge of what you're looking to do or something along the lines of that.
How would you gather that intelligence? How would you find that information out?
Definitely doing your research and just looking online, maybe making calls to that specific company, but probably more so looking online.
Yeah, looking online, When you talk about making calls to the company, who might you contact in the company?
Obviously, if you knew somebody in the company, you'd probably contact them a bit, but maybe just finding out who is in charge of what, and then maybe calling the people that are in charge of the hiring process or the perspectives outlook process. Or
Yes to a lot of that. As a rule, in a perfect world, you would have a relationship in that organization that can inform you about the culture, right, of the organization. Because one of the things that you'll learn as life moves on for you, Hunter, is that if people don't like each other, nothing else matters. And so understanding a company's culture and understanding you as you do and what culture best maps to your personal style is very, very important. Because believe us when we say you can have all the great skills in the world, it can be a great opportunity for you and be a great thing for everybody. But if people don't like each other, I'm sure you've been in situations where something was exciting and you got into it maybe through school or high school even, and the people involved, they didn't get along, and the end result is it just didn't work. So your friend, your relationship, which is different than a network or a contact. When you have a relationship with somebody, what does that mean? How would you define relationship?
I'd say a relationship is more so you know what that person values and who they are as a person specifically, and what their morals are and how they choose to act, and probably a more intimate relationship than just a networking connection.
Correct. How would you define a connection? How would you define a connection versus a relationship? What's the difference?
I'd say a connection versus a relationship. A connection is more so maybe, on LinkedIn, you make all those connections, but you may necessarily not have ever talked to those people, and you just kind of
Bingo.
of them.
Yeah, it's pretty superficial. The goal is though, you have this network kind of like a spider web, and in that network you have connections, and the goal is eventually, as appropriate, to move the connections into your relationship base. But you nailed it pretty much, right? A relationship usually implies mutual trust and respect. And sometimes it takes a long time to establish that. Sometimes, I'm sure you've experienced it too. You meet somebody and you just kind of just hit it off right away. So that person that that relationship that you have in an organization could be enormously valued from an intelligence standpoint, helping you understand the culture. If they know you, if they have a relationship with you, they can help you determine if it's a culture that you would fit well in and operate well in. They can also be a champion for you with respect to the people that are in charge of hiring. And Hunter, know this: human resources doesn't hire anybody. Human resources, they hire other HR people, but they make recommendations really when it comes to other departments throughout the company. Does that make sense? There's only two people in a company that know about the work that's being done or needs to be done. Do you know who those two people are? Would you guess?
I would say probably the personnel managers and maybe the CEO.
Okay. That's close. At your age, I would have believed the same thing. But there's the two people that know the work that needs to be done are the people that are doing the work and the person they report to. So having said that, who do you think is in the best position of informing you how to make your document, resume, CV, bio? Who do you think is in the best position to help you understand how to create a meaningful document?
I would say somebody that's in the thick of it, like the majority of the day, and doing the work and knowing what's necessary.
Right. Or the person that they work for. So when you have a relationship in an organization, that person might have a relationship with one or both of those parties and can maybe bridge you to them. In other words, your relationship, you would help them help you, which is, let's say you are my relationship in ABC company, and I hear about a particular opportunity, and you know the people, the hiring manager and the people that are doing the work, you know who they are. And what I would ask you to do is to bridge me to those people so that I could understand the work that needs to be done, so that I could then go to my resume, CV, or bio and make it meaningful. In other words, what I would say to you is, Hunter, I would really like to talk to one or both of those parties so that they can help me understand within the role that I want to apply for, say it's sales representative. As a sales representative, what are the challenges and issues in that role as sales representative that I would need to address and overcome to create value and impact?
And a great place to do that, Hunter, is the alumni network at your college. Many colleges have just vibrant alumni networks that are in the companies or have worked for the companies that you're intrigued with. So this is a great way to connect and find those inside contacts going within the college alumni network.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of job boards, Hunter, as an example, but job boards can be a great place to go to gather information about who's looking and what they're looking for. And then what you can do is you can back up and you can say, okay, do I know anybody in this organization or organizations? LinkedIn, as Elizabeth mentioned, alumni. And that's the first place you want to go for intelligence gathering or to create a champion in an organization is to first see if you have a relationship that you can leverage. Now, understand that nobody, Hunter, wants a cookie cutter resume, because a cookie cutter resume doesn't tell them anything about how you're going to help them be more successful as a company or as an individual. And oh, by the way, human beings don't even review your resumes anymore, or your resume. That's done by software. Back in the old days, a real person might pick it up and go, oh, this is Hunter, and here's where he's gone, here's where he's going to school. The computer program does that now, completely impersonal. And even if you're lucky enough that the software program spits you out, you might be on a stack of, I don't know, 100 others, and you're number 98. You're probably going to hire someone before they even get to you. This entire purpose is, well, there's lots of purposes, but one of the big purposes is to separate yourself from everybody else. Believe me, if you do your intelligence and you submit documentation that is meaningful and clearly communicates and demonstrates that you've done your homework, you've taken the time to determine if it makes sense for all parties involved to move forward, while everybody else is waving their resumes, sitting out in the lobby, you're going to be solving problems and challenges. You're going to completely separate yourself from the pack. The other thing that's nice too is when you are granted an interview, that document that you created is kind of your script for the interview. Because going in, you already have the information you need to do the work that needs to be done in the interview.
Frank, let's talk about what his challenges might be as a college student to get that information. I would think some low-hanging fruit for you, Hunter, would be initiating conversations with people who have these huge sibling groups. The one thing I've noticed, for example, with Benedictine is all these students have tons of brothers and sisters who are at different levels in their career, who often can give you tidbits of information about almost any type of company or how to position your skills in relation to almost any type of job. The alumni office is a great resource to connect you with other people who are in the industry you're looking at, and they can be a great source of information that if you're interviewing for the first time with X type of company in X industry, what type of skills do they value? What do you need to be prepared to discuss for this type of position? And what should your resume focus on to create and position you as a super viable candidate? Those kinds of resources are available to you. It just takes slowing down to gather the information to make a meaningful document before you submit it. The other thing I wanted to say, especially in relation to what Frank brought up, if you submit to a company blindly, that means you really don't know anybody internally. You've heard about a lead, but you're just submitting blindly. MSNBC suggests that if you apply online for a position, your chances are 1 in 1,000 versus if somebody walks you in, someone you know, who happens to know someone inside the company and passes your resume in,
The champion.
your chances are 1 in 7. And that's in an ideal world what you really want to do. You want to break away from the 1 in 1,000 and go to 1 in 7 by having a relationship with someone who can walk you in or bridge you to someone inside of the company who is like, yeah, this guy, he's what we're looking for.
But if you don't, Hunter, you can go direct to the person that is responsible for that particular role or department. And believe me, I'm telling you, especially at your age, you will so separate yourself. I mean, there's adults that aren't doing this. The professional maturity that you will exhibit, even if they don't reply to you, it's going to be a wow factor for them, because there isn't anybody else doing that unless they talk to us. A core dump resume, what you don't want is some infomercial submitted to somebody that's busy, because they really aren't interested in reading some infomercial about Hunter or Frank or Elizabeth. Again, junk mail versus meaningful documentation. Let's say somebody says, Hunter, please just send me your resume. Love to have your resume. Here's how we would like for you to respond to that. So, Hunter, you've asked me for my resume, and I respond with, Hunter, I'd be more than happy to provide you with whatever documentation you require. Resume, CV, bio, whatever you require. Please know that I have a core dump of information. What I don't want to do is send you some infomercial on me, because I'm sure you've got better things to do than to read some infomercial about me. So I'd love for you to help me, or I would appreciate if you would help me make the document you've requested meaningful. And how you can do that, Hunter, is to help me understand the role of sales representative that we're going to discuss, or hopefully I'll have the opportunity to discuss with you in person. I'd just like to understand in that role the challenges and issues in that role I would need to address and overcome to create value and impact. If you'll help me with that, then I will articulate for you in the document you've requested, in that role, the core competencies, the skills, the talents all pull into play, and how I'll use those to do what you need to have done the way you need to have it done and do it profitably. Right, Hunter? Does that make sense?
Definitely. That was to the T what I would never have guessed, but sounds exactly right to me, like the best case scenario.
Well, think about it. If you were hiring people, which one of these days you most likely will be, isn't that what you'd want? Don't you want to have people submit information to you that's going to make sense, that's going to help you understand how they're going to help you achieve your agenda as the sales manager, and also how they're going to help the enterprise achieve its goals and objectives. So even job descriptions will not typically communicate to you the meaningful information you need to have. Your goal is to find out what's behind that job description. If a person doesn't help you with that, then they don't get it. They're not serious. And that tells you a little bit about their culture and what it's going to be like to work for them, right? Those are the things that people always ignore in the beginning, those types of behaviors, because they're chasing a paycheck, not an opportunity. And believe it, when we tell you this, we've been around long enough to tell you there's a massive difference in the two. Now, look, sometimes people need jobs to feed their families. I get that. But while they're working that job, they can employ our best practices to identify and create the opportunity that they desire and they deserve for themselves and their families. I believe Webster should change the definition of resume to desperate job seeker. Nobody wants your resume, Hunter. Nobody wants mine. Nobody wants Elizabeth's. They just don't. I mean, so much so they've moved it to a software program because they've got better things to do than even review resumes. And human resources departments didn't go to school and like Benedictine, the young adults at Benedictine that are pursuing degrees in organizational development and human resources, I guarantee you they're not there learning how to review resumes. That's not what they want to do. And by the way, enlightened human resources departments get the value of what we're talking about as well. This is very simple. People appreciate it. Those that don't are saving you a lot of time because they're telling you that they don't get it. And if they don't get it, I contend that you don't want to be there. Because the one thing through that intelligence gathering, the big question you need to answer for yourself, Hunter, as well is, do you even want to do it? Yes, you want to position yourself meaningfully, but the other question you want to ask yourself as you look under the hood and peel back the onion is, do you even want to do what they're asking someone to do in that particular role?
So, Hunter, I want to put something in your mind that is a cautionary tale. I spend a ton of time every week with people who are senior level people, often mid-level managers or above, sometimes, blue collar workers, but many times people above 35 to 40 who are drifting in their career. These are people who tell me over and over and over again, I am not happy. And how this happened is that I found this little job. I took this job. I started getting a little bit of success in this job. I was promoted. I was given a few raises. And now here I am. I'm 47 with 2 kids. And I feel like I'm in the wrong industry. Gallup recently did an interview, and 80% of people employed are saying that they are unhappy and disengaged with their work. We are trying to tell you everything we know that is best practice so that you do not become that statistic. That is our goal here for you, is to give you enough wisdom to say, this is good for me, this is a good match for me, that you know yourself well enough, having gone through your own resume development process and review of your core skills, and you become comfortable enough with that inner gut feeling so that you can read a corporate culture and interact with people with enough confidence to say, this is a good fit or this is not a good fit. And you pursue what is right for you, because 80% of people end up in a category where it wasn't right for them. They stayed with it passively and they ended up in this place that now they're very unhappy with. And that is the last thing we want to see for you, because you're in the beginning, you're in the driver's seat, and it's all about what you want.
And Hunter, Elizabeth, to Elizabeth's point, about 80% of those people that go to work every day just hate going to work. What a lot of people have done and do consistently is retrofit themselves into being what a company wants them to be. So like the job board, everybody's thinking about, the software is going to be scrutinizing them. So what they'll do is they'll take everything out of a job posting, all the content,
all the
keywords, shove them into their document
and their cover letter,
submit it so that, the software spits them out. Well, I've been at this for over 40 years now. I've never understood why people do that. Why retrofit yourself and settle for something that you really don't want? And look, again, if you need a job, you need to feed your family, okay. But if you're really looking to create or identify an opportunity, you don't want to retrofit yourself. What you want to do is figure out what you love to do, what culture you best map to, what are you great at, and then go find someone that needs it. I mean, that's what companies do.
And understand too, Hunter, we recognize that you have to get through a screening process. That computer is going to go through your resume. So using keywords is typical best practice to get through those software systems. And that is not a crime to do that. However, I think what Frank is really aiming at is having enough internal knowledge of what you really want, so that that whole process of customizing your cover letter and your documentation doesn't become a default exercise of retrofitting yourself into every job description because that's what you think works. And you start running like a hamster on a wheel, just churning out this meaningless documentation, responding to everything and anything that moves. We want you to stop, be very knowledgeable and intentional about what you're looking for, so that you can find things that you identify with and God willing, have a relationship with a person inside that company or who can bridge you to that company so that you can get past that process of submittal almost altogether. But most likely you're going to have to go through it, and we recognize that.
Yeah, and and look, Hunter, I'm not trying to paint human resources as some bad place. It's not. I mean, like I said, those folks are really treated unfairly because really their role in a company is so much greater than resume reviewing. It's just ridiculous. They're there for benefits and how to help the employees become the best that they can possibly be, and making sure the company doesn't end up in some courtroom over employment practices breaches or legislation or whatever. If nothing else, I mean, if you don't have a relationship, you're not able to identify the person the position reports to, go to human resources if that's where you need to go and say, hey, I want to submit some documentation, but I want it to be meaningful. Can you help me with that? If nothing else, they're going to appreciate you, especially at your age, that you're showing that level of professional maturity. The core of all of this is just not to submit any documentation that's not meaningful. When you have that, we talk about warehouse of talent, warehouse of skills. That metaphor is an example with creating a meaningful document. It's like when you take your car to the mechanic and they do a diagnostics thing on it. And they're like, oh, okay, here's what's wrong. So they know what the challenge and the issue is. They go back to their warehouse. You have a warehouse of talent, warehouse of skills. They go back to their parts warehouse and they look at all these different parts because you have a lot of different talents and skills as well.
Average between 500 to 700 skills.
Yeah.
Okay. It's challenging.
The mechanic figures out, okay, you need this part, and that part. That's it. And guess what? That's all you care about because you want your car running. You don't care about all those other parts, right? So when you do your intel gathering, you know exactly what parts that hiring manager needs. This one, this one, this one. That goes into your document. You submit it. Help understand how those parts are going to help his car run better. And you're going to get his or her attention. It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Yeah, and quite frankly, it is. Any questions?
Other things you might be thinking about or struggling with as you look at COVID and how it might be impacting opportunities.
Yeah, that's definitely one question. I guess it's kind of foreign to all of us, I'd say, but what's more of an etiquette now that applying for jobs is probably going to be all Zoom or maybe over the phone? And if it is Zoom, what's the etiquette, or I'm assuming the dress code would be similar. So maybe more so like, what is the number one question you could ask over a Zoom call that you can't ask in a personal setting? So more so like, maybe this is an example for me is like, what is your guys' culture like, and how does an everyday worker that I'm applying for that specific position, like a sales rep, what do they go through, and then what's the culture like within your company? So is there anything else that goes along with that kind of genre question that you guys would suggest asking at all?
Just asking someone about a particular role or department, Hunter?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's what I would say, more so in a department or role specifically.
During a Zoom call?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Those are a couple of very good questions because, companies have global enterprise cultures, enterprise-wide, and then each department has its own individual culture. So that's a great question. What is, the department, the sales department, what's the culture within that department? You can ask a question such as, what are the common threads that run through your most successful salespeople? Yeah, we're talking about sales, but it could be accountants or engineers, and then again, what the culture of that department is. I mean, is that answering your question, or?
Yeah, I think that was a great way of explaining it. Honestly, the common threads throughout that role specifically, that's a good way of saying it, I think.
There are a few of these things I want burned into your brain. Okay. And here's one. The best interviewing question on the planet to ask is, in the role of salesperson, Ms. Sales Manager, what do I need to do to create the greatest amount of impact for you as the sales manager? Everybody focuses on the company, but every person you meet with, and let's say after you meet the sales manager, you meet the VP of sales, ask him or her the same question. You meet the person that's responsible for the admin staff, same question, right? Because everybody in a company, there's a global agenda, Hunter, but there are also individual agendas. And you want people to understand that you want to help them personally succeed as well. Best question on the planet. So if you're having a Zoom call and before every interview, you make a phone call, leave a voicemail, you send an in-mail through LinkedIn, or if you're connected to them, just send them a message or whatever, get their email address if you can. And part of preparation for that interview, you ask them, hey, I want our discussion to be as meaningful as possible. What do I need to do to prepare to ensure that goal is met by the end of our discussion? Every person. And Hunter, even if they don't respond to you, they're going to be wowed. Because again, nobody's doing that unless they're talking to Elizabeth, unless they're talking to us, right? So you're asking them, what do I need to do to prepare? That's a huge, huge question to ask. And you'll know exactly where you need to go and, well, of course, prepare properly before you get there. But it gives you a deeper look into the organization as well, because everybody wants to know how you're going to help them achieve their personal agenda. Does that make sense?
The thing, Hunter, I would add, you had asked about how to prepare for a Zoom call. The things I would suggest, always make sure you're in a place where you really understand what other people are seeing on the other end. So have a discussion and a preview call with someone who's going to say, that cabinet behind you has an open door and one of the pictures is sideways behind you, because that just kind of makes it a little easier for the person who's viewing to go, oh, well, I get it. It's cool.
Hey, Hunter, by the way, she does this to me all the time. Okay.
The other thing is, and this is going to sound really silly, but 3 other quick things. Always have good lighting on your face, like warm lighting, close to your face, so that you maybe have a little desk lamp that's throwing some light on your face, so you're well lit. That really counts, and it's not cold light, or cold blue light, but rather warm, peachy colored light, so you look very natural. Also, you would want to wear a contrasting shirt. Your shirt actually matches perfectly the wallpaper or paint in that room. You would want to wear something like a French blue or a white shirt that would contrast well with that environment. And you got that. It's really easy. It's small things you can do, but you will look infinitely better. I mean, like 50 to 60% better just with some good lighting and a great contrasting color for your shirt. Anything else in terms of questions that you might have, Hunter? You've been wonderful as we've shared with you just this huge scope of information.
Well, I do have one more, but I was going to say I was really excited to put on a nice shirt, and at my dorm room I do have a very nice lamp that sits on my desk that provides very good color. But that was also before I got quarantined, so this is all kind of on the fly for me. I didn't have a chance to bring a nice polo or anything nice shirt wise.
Okay, you look great, and we're just so honored to have you here. We're so grateful, because this is everybody's world right now, is in their den with their t-shirt recovering from COVID. So typical.
And Hunter, I would tell you it's okay to wear a sports coat. I always believe, I mean, I wore like coats and ties and suits up until about a year ago, Hunter. I still feel funny without a tie on, but I'm 110, so I go way back, right? I've been wearing suits and ties my whole life. But I would say in today's world, I think that it's okay to dress like one level above, and you make a first impression once. So maybe a nice shirt and a sports coat of some kind would be good. Again, you want to set yourself apart, and those kinds of things will set yourself apart. So I know you have another question. I've got something else I wanted to communicate to you as well. So what's your question?
In my management class that we've been talking about a lot of like stepping stool kind of jobs. So once you get out into the real world, like you were talking about, Elizabeth, the 80%, you're not usually they're not in a place that they're happy in. And something that is always like kind of resonated with me about that is that what goes into the process of knowing what you're wanting to do, what you would be happy to do. And when you're in a position where you're not happy, how do you look for that next step or that next opportunity or the process of the next opportunity for you that would make you happy possibly?
That's another
Right.
video.
I think that we could talk for this for hours, but I would love to answer this too, Frank.
Sure.
So I'm gonna give you what worked for me, Hunter, is one thing I did right out of school that I thought was one of the best moves I ever did, which was sign up for a temporary job position, working at temporary jobs and temporary gigs. This enabled me to be assigned every week to different companies and different sectors. And they put me in multiple just little administrative positions or gopher positions where I was just, showing up to take care of somebody who was out for the day. And it was my first job out of college. And it enabled me to go into multiple types of companies, get a feel for different types of cultures, and discover that I really like this culture and I really didn't like this culture. For example, banking. I walked into banking institutions and always felt really out of place because they were so formal versus ad agencies. I was put into an ad agency where I was working in the back room where they did focus groups, and I would bring in sandwiches for the people, the executives that would come in, and I would serve these guys sandwiches, set up the room, give the registration sheets out, collect the sheets at the end of the evening, check the executives out. And that job was one of the most instrumental jobs of my career in that it let me sit and listen to executives as they watched focus groups. So the owners of Lee Jeans would come in at Valentine Radford and sit and listen to a focus group on their recent product release. Missouri Lottery would come in and listen to focus groups of consumers talk about what they think of the new scratch off ticket. Multiple different types of clients would come in and I would learn, oh my gosh, I loved advertising. I loved the psychology of what I was hearing. And what was I doing? I was serving Subway sandwiches, you know, and it was one of the best things ever. So those temporary positions turned out to be solid gold for me. And I would say that gave me the courage to determine where I was a really good fit and where I wasn't a good fit. And knowing what you don't want is 50% to getting to where you do want to be. But many people don't embrace places they don't want to be, but you don't know until you're assigned. So often those random assignments turn into absolute pure gold, because even if you don't want to be there, that becomes a huge indicator of where you do want to go. And it opened doors left and right for me.
Well,
Yep.
and we get into this, kind of gets into that, your story, right, Elizabeth? About
Mhm.
your story, Hunter, and defining what you love to do and culture you map to what you're great at, kind of a thing, and then how to leverage that. When you do, and that might be something we talk about maybe at some future date, but once you have your story clarified, one of the things you can do is you can go, which is a great track to your first engagement of college, is to talk to people that are doing what you want to do. Does that make sense? Because they're the ones, I don't know if your mother ever said birds of a feather flock together, but my mother used to say that all the time. The people doing what you want to do are in the arena you want to play. So isn't that where you should play? So you have your overarching relationship base, but then you have a sub base of relationships with people that are doing what you want to do. Those are the people that are going to be able to bridge you to similar opportunities. They're the ones that are going to get calls from recruiters. Oh, I'm not interested, but I know Hunter over here is. You follow me? Plus, those at your age coming out of school, your story might be this. And then you go talk to people that are doing what you want to do. And then you go, I don't want to do that. And your story changes. And then you go do the same thing. There is a tremendous amount of information that you can gain from people that are doing what you want to do, right? That map to whatever your story ends up being. And they can also help you understand if that's something that ultimately you want to do. And they can help bridge you to opportunities. I've even had situations, Hunter, where people, a CFO in healthcare wants to be in manufacturing. He or she talks to CFOs in manufacturing, and I haven't witnessed it, but I know people where they've been in a discussion and the person says, well, you can have my job when I retire. Oh, okay. So, or I'm retiring. Hey, you can interview for my job or whatever. So that's a great place for you to start once you understand and have some clarity, which Elizabeth would agree, understanding your story, which is another topic, is the first thing that you really need to establish. So that's a suggestion for you as well. Elizabeth is right. Knowing what you don't want to do helps a lot.
It does. The other thing, Hunter, I'd just like to conclude by sharing with you is I Googled skills employers are looking for in 2020 in recent college grads before this call. And here are the top 5 that came up: teamwork and collaboration, professionalism, strong work ethic, oral and communication skills, leadership, judgment decision making, service orientation, emotional intelligence, coordinating with others, people management, creativity, critical thinking and problem solving, and also complex problem solving. Those were all skill sets that when you talk to someone who is doing that role that you're thinking of applying for, sometimes if you don't have necessarily direct experience, but can come up with an example of where you've used the skills that relate to the position, that can be a great way to communicate within the context of a resume how, while you might not have direct experience, you might have volunteered for a student leadership position, which had you making complex judgment calls, had you managing other people, had you responsible for multiple types of communications that were intricate communications that drove measurable results. You can factor that story and tell it the way you need to tell it based on your own unique experience if you understand how to illustrate the kinds of skills that they're looking for. So it's all yours. The great thing is you're in much more control sometimes than people feel. And if there's one thing we want to impart to you is go for it. Go for what you really want. Dream big. Swing for the fences. You deserve the very best. And your story is extremely unique. And the right group of people to be a real first opportunity for you are out there. To prepare yourself, I want to tell you, in our YouTube channel, we have a module completely dedicated to helping you prepare for that first interview. It's module 7, leaving a good footprint. Also, as Frank said, we cover a huge breadth of subjects. Module 2, the story of you, would be another great resource, I think, for you to get your arms around how to tell your story in such a way that you really connect with other people and they can remember how to position your value within their networks to bridge you to that opportunity. Because like we said from the beginning, what you're really looking for is someone to walk you in, just to bypass completely the blank interview process and connect with someone who can walk you in.
And if I might add, Hunter, people have asked me for years how I define opportunity. And quickly, I define it, there's 2 components to that. First, when you define it, when you talk about it, it needs to literally create so much adrenaline for you that you find it difficult sleeping at night because you can't wait to go create it, find it, or go do it the next day. And I don't mean that. That's just not a bunch of words, Hunter. I mean, it's like like dating the first, like your girlfriend, the first night, your first date, you're all excited and can't wait. And that's the feeling I'm talking about. The second component is it practical? Emotion and intellect are like oil and water. They don't mix very well. And most of the decisions we make as human beings are driven by emotion, which isn't always the best way, right? So an opportunity, the excitement and the adrenaline is the emotion, needs to be there. The other thing that needs to be there is, from a practical standpoint, when you remove emotion as much as you can, when you look at it, does it, like the value you're creating for a company, that value proposition knife cuts both ways. Does it provide you with the value and the things that you need regarding the opportunities that become available to you and setting you up for your future as well? Both of those need to be there for it to be an opportunity. One misses, one's missing, it's a job. When it comes to culture, look at culture as a friend. You know the characteristics a friend needs to have. Those that you consider to be your friend or you have relationships with, same kind of thing. Companies are made up of people. Companies have personalities. There's one big personality or a bunch of personalities crammed in a building together. When you're looking at a company and if you fit in, is this company like, could this company be like another friend? Does that make sense? Because sometimes people struggle with what's the corporate culture thing all about. And I will tell you, Hunter, I wish I had at your age. Listen to your heart. Listen to that voice in your head. No, Hunter, look at me. You looking at me? Okay. Know this. If you don't feel right, there's a reason. Don't ignore it. Because your flight or flight type stuff as human beings, don't ignore it.
Hunter, thank you so much for your time today and for asking us great questions. If there's any way we can help you moving forward, we will be right here. And we so appreciate you sharing with us your challenges.
Thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. You helped me out a lot tonight.
Yeah, you're a very nice young man, Hunter. I'm gonna send you a LinkedIn or connection to connect on LinkedIn. Need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay,
All
you bet.
right. God bless, Hunter.
Take
Thank
care,
you
Hunter.
so much.
Take care, guys. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.